Out of the Ordinary Insights, brought to you by Investec Specialist Bank.
Well, welcome to Captains of Industry, and in this week's episode we profile Louis van der Walt, who's the Chief Executive of the Atterbury Property Group. Louis, you're the Chief Executive of Atterbury, which is no doubt one of the biggest property groups in South Africa and on the continent. Since its inception or entry into the market in 1992, what major changes do you think Atterbury's brought about?
I think we started as a small development company, only locally in Pretoria. We started with offices and then shopping centres, and then it sort of gradually moved from there. In the early 2000s, we've developed 3 or 4 fairly large shopping centres, Woodlands in Pretoria, Clearwater, Garden Route Mall. And then 6-7 years later, we've decided to venture into Africa, where we've started with shopping centres. We're busy with our third one now in Ghana. We're looking at one in Mozambique. We're doing one in Zambia. We completed one in Mauritius. We're busy with one in Namibia. And again, we've moved on now where we're looking at Eastern Europe. So I think that the changes that I've seen and that we've made is starting from a small company in Pretoria, then to a bigger company in South Africa, then Africa, and now almost, all over the world.
As I mentioned, you are one of the founding members. What was the motivation behind that?
I was an audit clerk at Deloitte, one of the auditing firms, and I've met Francois van Niekerk, who had an IT company, Infotech, at that stage, and we both liked property, and we've decided to form a property company. I wasn't made out to be an auditor. I don't think Francois was made out to be an IT specialist, and we decided to form Atterbury, which was a property company, and we both love property.
Well, let's get into your potential listing on the JSE. That's due to take place by the end of September, if I'm not mistaken. How far is the process so far?
It's by mid-October will the listing date be. I think the prospectus will be out the first week in October. Everything is fine. Everything is according to plans. We're looking forward to that. And I think I must just stress that Atterbury is 2 separate companies. One is ATTAC, which will be the listed vehicle, which is our property fund. And then Atterbury Property, which is the development company, which does the developments. ATTAC holds a 25% stake in Atterbury Property, but it is the listed company, ATTAC, where the listing will be next month.
What are the reasons for the listing?
I think it's twofold. The one is, the shareholders need a liquidity event, or they want to liquidize their assets. So there's a lot of shareholders that need a forum where they can buy and sell shares. And then the second thing is capital raising. We've acquired the Mia land, or the Waterfall land, from the Mia family in 2008, 2009. And the capital requirement to develop and to roll out the projects there is huge. And Atterbury is a private company. It's not always easy to raise that sort of capital. And with the listing, it gives us now the forum to start obtaining equity and getting money in to roll out that development. And then I think largely the whole funding, I think, can be cheaper being a listed vehicle as well. At the moment, we have to use very expensive finance from banks, and I think that can change once we're a listed vehicle.
And I take it expectations are also fairly high after the listing, because you currently have an over-the-counter trade facility taking place with regard to your shares, and there aren't many buyers there. Everyone's waiting for the initial listing, and hopefully the share price will shoot up.
There aren't many sellers. So
we go.
There's a lot of buyers. I've seen over-the-counter. We've got a fairly active over-the-counter trade. Over the last 2-3 years, I think there's between 1 and 2 billion rand of shares have traded. But sort of the last 2-3 months, I've seen that there's a lot of buyers with the expected listing, and there's not a lot of sellers. So the share price have moved quite a bit, the last 2-3 months.
Let's take a look at your African expansions. You touched on that just a moment ago, and in particular seeing major success with regard to Ghana. Like you said, you're opening up your 3rd mall there. How is that market in particular performing for Atterbury?
It's doing exceptionally well. I mean, we formed a fund called Atterbury Africa. Jointly, it's ATTAC, Hyprop, and then Atterbury. And we've acquired the first asset there. It was the Accra Mall. We bought it from Actors in a joint venture with Sandam. And that was sort of the springboard, And after that, we've identified 3 or 4 properties. Accra Mall is in the center of Accra. And then on the western side, there was a site called West Hills, where we bought a piece of land in a joint venture with the government pension fund. On the northern side, we've also bought a site, and now we're looking at the eastern side. That's only in Accra. Then we're looking at Kumasi as well, which is one of the other major cities in Ghana. And I think what we've done there is to try and almost secure and dominate a country. You know, we went in, and it's easier to negotiate with the retailers if you can give them 3 or 4 alternatives. You know, if you want to do a development in a foreign country and you only have one mall, the logistics for them is it's heavy. You know, it's not easy to do that. But if you tell them, listen, this is the first of 3 or 4 or 5 malls, then it changes the whole play. And I think with that, we're going back to the retailers, especially the South African retailers, and being able to give them 3 or 4 sites in Ghana. I mean, that made a big difference. And then as well, you know, it's very difficult now for other developers to come into Accra and do a shopping center. You know, we've got one in each section or sector of the city, and it's very difficult now to come in and compete with us.
You mentioned South African retailers. I understand you have the likes of ShopRite as well as Mr. Price also coming on board. How difficult was it to forge those relationships with the local companies?
I think, and it's not only the 2 of them, Woolworths is going in there, the Trueworths Group is going in there, so there's a whole lot of South Africans that's going in there. I think the fortunate thing is, you know, we had a long-standing relationship with the guys, you know, also when we did the mall in Mauritius. And I think they've seen over the years that you know, we can talk the talk. You know, if we tell them we're going to do a mall in a specific country, we do that. You know, we did one in Mauritius, it's usually successful. So when we went to these retailers and say, we've identified Ghana as a very good country and we think it's worth looking at. And by the way, we've got 3 or 4 sites there. Most of them start taking it seriously. You know, ShopRite was already there, Mr. Price was already there. But now some of the newer ones, they're following us into the malls. And fortunately, not only our own track record, but also of the existing Accra Mall. They could see for themselves that it's a country worth investing in, and I think that made it easy.
You're also looking at moving into other African countries. How will the rolling out of your property developments work there? Is it a copy and paste kind of formula, or do you adapt to the market that you're catering for?
No, you will always have to adapt. You know, each country has its own specific requirements, but what we do is we always find a local partner. You know, I think that's the most important one. We're doing now a big mall in Namibia where the government pension fund is our partner. I think we own 50% and they own the rest. There's a small shareholding of the landowner. In Accra, we did the same with the government pension fund. In Mauritius, we partnered with one of the biggest listed groups there. We're looking now in Mozambique, again the same thing where the local partner is of importance. So I think the way we will roll it out in Africa is always, it will be country specific, but we will find a partner in that country that understands the country. Most often it's the government pension fund, but not necessarily, but we will always do it in partnership with someone.
Your expansion projects in Africa compared to Europe, hasn't that Europe been a rather tough economic trading environment for you?
Europe has, and we've only started with that now, but we've found 1 or 2 very good opportunities where we've already secured the land in Eastern Europe, and I think it will be easily as big as Africa. You know, if you look at Resilient and the way that Des de Beer has done Nepi, I think it's been hugely successful for him. You can see on the premium that the Resilient shares straight, and I think a big portion of that is due to the investment in Eastern Europe. I think that's sort of the next place where we will focus after Africa, and again mainly retail. I mean that's our strength. That's the biggest portion of our developments. But I think we will definitely venture into Eastern Europe. And
your expectations to come out from, or expectations with regard to trade that might come out from that region?
It's huge. You know, we've been to Georgia, for instance. Now in Eastern Europe, you get 700 square meters of retail for every 1,000 people that live in a town. In a place like Georgia, it's 140 square meters, so it's about 5 times less than what it's supposed to be, and the money is there. You know, the one big difference that I've seen between Eastern Europe and Africa is the infrastructure is usually sorted out there. In Africa, you have to spend quite a bit on the infrastructure first. In Eastern Europe, it's not necessary. The infrastructure is there, so the disposable income of the people can all go towards spending money in a shopping center, and that's why we like that.
Let's also touch on your Waterfall development there. That surely should be the pride of your eye, maybe, or the apple of your eye when you look back on some of the developments that you've made. Prime South African land there, probably the last of its kind, and you've got future developments also taking place there, such as the Mall of Africa.
We acquired that land in, I think, 2009. It was around about there from the Mia family, and at that stage it had 800,000 square meters of development rights. We've since then increased that to over 1.7 million square meters of development rights. Now, that is more development rights than Atterbury have developed in the last 19 years. So it gives you the idea of the size of that development. But what is nice there, we think it's the prime position. You know, if you look at the road infrastructure, the Buccleuch interchange, the way that Sandton have expanded, that Johannesburg have expanded, Pretoria have expanded, that's almost the only piece of land still available. And what makes it nice as well is you can plan from day one. It's not a congested area where you have to find a parcel of land to do a development. It's a whole city. To give you an idea, we call it Pocket 10, which is the central piece of the Waterfall land. That's almost the size of Sandton CBD. But you've got the advantage now of planning it from day one. You can plan the security, the roads, everything. You know, it's as if you've got a clean slate to do a city on, and that makes a huge difference. The type of tenants that we're helping there as well is typically the campus-style tenant. You know, we've done a development now for Cell C, which is almost 50,000 square meters. But they want a warehouse, they want offices, they want a facility where they can interact with the public. Now, it's very difficult to put that size of tenants somewhere in Sandton or in Joburg or in Pretoria for that matter. And that is what makes this development so nice. I mean, the Mall of Africa you've mentioned, it's about 120,000 square meters that we want to do in one go. And again, you know, because we can plan it from day one, we've attracted international retailers that can't find space in one of the existing malls in South Africa. But now we can plan it from day one. It's not as if you have to move tenants around. You can plan for a specific tenant. So I think the mall that we're going to put down there, the 120,000 square meters, will also be completely different to any other mall in South Africa with the mix of tenants, with the type of tenants that we get in that's not in South Africa yet.
And for the South African consumer, what might be the benefit, or what can they expect once this mall officially launches?
I think it's going to be magnificent. I mean, if you look at the finishes, the amount of money that we spend on the mall, I mean, we want to really pitch it as almost the up market. You know, it will definitely be a mall that you haven't seen in South Africa before, and not only with the finishes, but also with the tenants and I think the consumers will benefit hugely.
Well, after the break, do join us as we continue speaking to Louis van der Walt, who is the Chief Executive of Atterbury Properties.